Welcome, willkommen, benvenu, benvenuti, benvindo, bienvenidos. I ask to tell me how to say welcome in your own language. So, welcome, yes, everyone to Blender Today Live. It's 9 p.m. We are just started. It's on a Monday. There was developer meetings happening this week. There has been code quest meetings also happening last week. The Blender 2.8 project is going full speed. The team is at Spring are using it every day. It even got faster, or maybe should we leave it like, yeah, maybe it's faster. I made a video over at the Blender developers YouTube channel where I show off that feature. So it's quite an exciting moment for using Blender 2.8 because it's actually getting improved in the terms of performance, even without doing that many optimizations anymore. So it's really has a bright future. So please give me a thumbs up if everything is going fine with the stream, just to know. Yeah, I think we should get to it, right? What happened last week? What didn't happen last week? There was so many things. Last week I made one video per day over at the developers YouTube channel. And let's see what was it all about. Then I need to mention something about the dev talk forum as well, so I will get to it right now. So Blender developers, youtube.com/Blender developers. That's where all the videos for the code quests are happening. I'm making one video per day. I hope I can keep it up. In the last video, the one from last week, this one I published like 1 hour ago, but the other one, the week number 8 roundup, I think a lot of people, thanks for the thumbs up. I think of a lot of people were confused that I said I would stop making videos like right away, or like I would do it less. No, I think I will try to keep pushing the one video per day as long as the code quest is going. I will try my best because there's always new things happening. So for example, the 5 videos that I did is about the mode switching. It's some new shortcuts that are being tested on Blender itself, on Blender 2.8. Single column layout, wireframes, that's a big one. A roundup, which is more like showing a bunch of features, and then the one that I made today, which is the performance. And also the look that was also last week. That's crazy. And during the weekend, I support, which we already mentioned in the other live stream in the previous Blender Today. So let's get to it. The way this works, let's keep it in. I show some stuff and then we go to the questions. And since last week and last few days, I think everybody's following the Blender Developers YouTube channel. So some of the demos I could do it here live just to show what's the latest and greatest, but also maybe I can just focus more on the questions, because this is live. We're live here. So if you're gonna do a question, please add Blender Today and it will show up in orange. We're streaming live on Twitch and on YouTube, but I'm gonna read the questions from YouTube because it's easier to spot them this way. So let's do the test. So I'm here on my Blender source 2.8 git pull. Already up to date. This is the proof that we're running Blender today. So let's open it. I just compiled it, and well, I'm at it before this. Just want to say a quick cheers, guys, and let's get to it. There is a lot of questions already with regarding especially the shortcuts. So let's see how it's all that. Nice. It's cold beer. That's you can't beat a cold beer. All right, let's get to it. Blender 2.8. This is the theme. We wanted to we did a quick test. Okay, off topic, but we did a quick test to get the theme to be loaded as default. We wanted to quickly test with the blueberry theme, the one that I'm using right now, but there were some, like, changing the theme in Blender for default is not a walk in the park. It takes some tweaking, so we wanted to test it but we couldn't. There are many things, many things of development that are tried, but they don't make it till the end, and it's yeah, sometimes they just don't make it, or you spend a lot of hours working on a feature, and then you just, yeah, you can't show it because you didn't make it. So all the videos that I make is about the features that make it. So imagine all the features that didn't make it. So let's get to it. What is new this week? The first thing that I mentioned before is about the shortcuts. So some shortcuts have been changed. The main ones are that tab no longer switches between edit mode and object mode. So now you have to press number 2. This is a test, we're testing things. So yeah, basically number 1 and 2 will switch between the modes for edit mode and object mode. If you press 2 when you're already in edit mode, you repeat that key, it will go into mesh select mode and will let you choose which one of these sub modes are on. And many other modes have sub modes, so this will be repeated in other workflows. So 1, 2. After you get used to the switching, it's actually not that bad. Even if you combine it with pressing 2, for example, and then pressing the number that it's assigned to each one of these options, which is 1 for vertex, 2 for edge, and F or number 3 for face. You do 2, 3, and then you are in face select. To 1, and then you are in vertex select. To 2, and then you are in edge. So it's actually like I'm doing it one hand. Look, mom, no hands. So it's actually quite fast, even without using pie menus. With the pie menus, it's gonna be, I think it's even faster. But even then, 2, 1 to 2 to 1. Then number 3 is gonna be weight paint mode. Number 4, in this case, is vertex paint mode. And then number 5, in this case, texture paint. Number 6, sculpt. Number 7 goes back or it goes out basically of the mode. And that it depends on the modes, on the object, of course. If you have an object like an armature, then it doesn't have vertex paint mode, but it has a edit mode. So you can press the 2 for edit mode or 3 for pose mode. So that is very convenient because number 3 on your mesh is going to be weight paint, and number 3 in your armature is pose mode. They are related, right? When you're posing, you're changing the weight paint on your mesh, so they actually make sense that both in number 3. So this, of course, maybe I was thinking that since we are playing with the shortcuts on this side of the keyboard, this is a I'm just thinking about it, just like an idea. So maybe it's a good idea to put in number 1, since we are in object mode, press again number 1 and it would trigger the pie menu. So that way we have both. We have press it once and you go from edit mode to object mode, and then you just switch around. Maybe that's a good idea. Then the key that is next to the tilde, the key that is next to the 1, which usually is the tilde, that one, or depends on whatever you have in your keyboard, but that one, it could be assigned to the, like a pie menu with the, it's not there yet, but I'm thinking maybe it could be assigned to a pie menu of the views. So that way, now that we don't have emulate numpad anymore, well, we could get rid of emulate numpad and just use that key and switch with the pie menu. So it's super fast, you know, you click and go up and down, and maybe. And the cool thing is that the direction would sort of mimic the direction on your numpad. So it's kind of related. Maybe that's a cool idea. I don't know. Let me know. I'll keep testing. This, of course, I'm talking about this in Blender today. This is not the official Blender developers, so it's more like a hangout, and let's see what could be implemented. Let's discuss it. So that was about the switching of the modes. And another one is that tab is now it's for search. And there is a reason for that, is that tab as a modifier cannot be combined with other keys, but the spacebar was assigned to the toolbar because spacebar can function as a modifier. So you could hold spacebar and press another key for going into the tool. So in this case, for example, you have select border. You can do you hold spacebar and you press B and you go immediately into the border select tool. And the same if you want to go to move or rotate or S, you do the tool, the spacebar, and while you hold it as a modifier, like if it was shift or control, then you switch. That's the reason why the toolbar is in the spacebar, because spacebar can be used as a modifier key. So you can do spacebar G, spacebar. In object mode doesn't have a lot of sense, but imagine if you were in another mode, for example in sculpt mode, and then you would have assigned keys or numbers to these shortcuts, then you could do hold space and then switch. That's one of the reasons, mainly. That's the whole the whole reason why is it spacebar and not tab. Why is tab taken? So that's another reason. Next, let's continue. The single column layout, that's another big thing. Let's see it in a more developed file, like this file from Emiliano Colantoni. Single column layout is the concept of having the tools, the properties all in one column, and it got a lot of mixed feelings. Everybody was either hating it or loving it. Most people liked it, actually. If you look at the people at the likes and dislikes on YouTube and in general, a lot of people like it. A lot of people are still discussing like why there is some room here that it's maybe not the best. Why is the text aligned to the right? And we can just like the text alignment takes no time to change it really. So it could be tested, of course, or it could be a setting maybe. Why not? You know, we have so many settings that one more wouldn't hurt. But the cool thing about this, of course, it increases scrolling, but I think it's better for readability, so that way you can read all the settings one by one, and then you can apply them or you can go through them one by one. Once we have the presets, that's another thing that's going to change soon, is the presets are going to go up here in the header, and they're going to be more like a smaller button where you can select your presets. And the preset system is also going to change. It's going to be much nicer. Right now, the preset system in Blender is very limiting. You can't edit a preset, for example. You can't save a preset unless you go and type the exact same name and then okay. That's very limiting. And you don't know in which setting you are. For example, now I put HD, but then I change the settings and the preset still says that it's in HD, which is not true. So having that changed, that would be a big improvement. And there are plans to change it. There are plans to make it not like a Python file, but maybe something else like a JSON file or something that Blender can read and check the settings one by one and then compare. So if it changes, then call it something else or call it custom. Which is something with the Python file, you couldn't do it without going into nasty tricks and hacks. So that will be another improvement. But the biggest improvement that happened is over the weekend, because developers keep working over the weekend, is having sub panels. What are sub panels? Where there are panels within panels. So let's go to the worst case. Let's open Blender 279. Let's see the beauty of going into, for example, this monstrosity, which is the rigid body world. Once you enable it, this panel becomes 3 panels, which is weird. And also if you shuffle them, then when you enable and disable, or when you remove the rigid body, then the panels appear wherever they were. So it's just strange, because then your settings are all spread all over the place. But in 2.8, enter subpanels. Subpanels are panels that belong to another panel. So for example, if I have, let's do the same example, rigid body world. So in rigid body world, if I enable it, now I have everything in the same panel, but with the subpanels. So what are subpanels? Panels within panels, easy peasy. They are a panel that you can collapse and expand. They keep all the preferences, and it's the simplest thing, not only for developers, but also for users, for people that make add-ons. The only thing that you have to change to your panel is add the parent ID. Like when you define the panel, if you're used to the code, you said like BL label for the label of the panel, then you set the ID, and then you can set the parent ID and give the name of the parent panel, and then it will go there automatically. So it's super simple. You don't have to like rewrite your panels or anything. It's very very nice. The implementation is very elegant, because then that way rigid body, you can have it here, and you have all three panels, but if you don't use it, it's just the one panel. And that will decrease scrolling, because now we can add more, we can be even more verbose with the settings, like use curves. Look at this huge panel, but how often do you use it? You can collapse it. That is, I think it's pretty, it's gonna make quite a difference. For example, the old panel for delta transform, which was always there, now it's a sub panel within the transform, so it all fits in one, or you can just collapse it, and that is happening all over the place. So it's a great change. I'm pretty happy about it, and I hope we can implement this in other places in Blender, everywhere. Let's put it all over the place. I think particles are having it. Yes, so for example, the particles, they are gonna be rewritten at some point, so it's not like we need to spend so much time in it, but at least you can organize things a bit better. I think it's a good improvement. What else? Let's continue. In the viewport, the shading, that hasn't changed. The X-ray setting, so let's talk wireframes. Wireframes were missing from object mode for ages. You know, like it's been missing for ages, because they were used in edit mode, so of course you can model and everything, but in object mode they were just not implemented. So a lot of people were like, oh, are you gonna add it or not? Yes, of course, you can't live without wireframes, but the implementation needed time to think about it, and also needed of other features to work well. So for example, we have the wireframes now overlay, that it just draws wireframes on top of the mesh, and we can, it's an overlay that works in object mode, of course, but we can also press set. For the time being, there will be there is a whole other discussion going on regarding presets, but that's I'm gonna mention it in a bit. By default, the X-ray is turned on when you press C, and you get to see the objects, like you see the wireframes on top of the mesh, and you still see a little bit of the shading underneath it. So that way it becomes a bit more useful, because we can find out exactly, okay, this wireframe belongs to this object, the pink object, or the green, or the other, the yellow. It also works with your material settings if you have it set up, and it also works in flat lighting, and with the new setting that X-ray has, you can make it full transparent, and that way you just see the wireframes. So that way you can have it just like it was in 2.7, but with the added value that you can now see the depth. You get to see when there are objects overlapping. You know now that they're overlapping, unlike in 2.7. So I think that's a great improvement. Really nice. That is thanks to It's a combination, right? The wireframes were made by Clément and the X-ray by Jeroen Bakker, so it's like teamwork. Specular highlights, that's another thing that was added last week. What a week. Specular means that your objects, even in flat lighting, can have specularity, and the specularity is set on the material settings. There is a new panel called Viewport Display, and this Viewport Display panel is it's a new it was called Viewport, I think, but now it's called Viewport Display. And the concept of a Viewport Display panel is shared across objects, is shared across particles, about the setting for the scene as well. They're also sharing that. So the idea is to unify the naming and have it all there. This specularity has roughness that you can control in the material. Then you can also change the color of your material, and you can also change the specular color. So this will remind you to Blender internal, actually, because it's using the same Fong shader. So it's the Blender internal is still among us. Can make it less, so that way you can see your geometry much better with the specularity. You can turn them off completely by just changing the shading setting on your shading panel. Pop over. The cool thing is that it works with every other setting. So if you are in texture, you're seeing your textures, it just works, and you can enable it on top of your flat lighting. So it really helps to see the effect that your specular has in the object. You can see volumes, and the setting to see the HDR also got a new feature, which is show the background with a slider to change the opacity. Let's remove the background here, and also you can now rotate it. So you can rotate or not. Maybe it will crash, maybe not. Let's try again. This live stream is all about breaking Blender, so let's break Blender again. I'm stubborn. I'm gonna try this guy, and then I'm going to rotate it. And it worked. Okay, just bad luck with the previous one. You can preview the background, and it's blurred for the time being because only the diffuse is blurred. So the reflections are actually completely sharp. The reflections that you will see on the objects, those are completely sharp. But the effect, the background is just blurred, so you can see it a bit better and without too much noise in the background, without too much high frequency details. You can also enable or disable the scene light, so that way if you disable it, it won't affect the lighting on your mesh, and then from your scene on your model, and that way you can be really fair in comparing your own settings. So that's pretty neat. Continue, because otherwise I'm not gonna fit everything here. The workbench, I think that's enough for the workbench engine. What is next? I already said the viewport, the look dev, single column, wireframes. The roundup of the week number 8 had a bunch of little features here and there that I wanted to mention. So one of them is the sub panels that I already mentioned. There is a change that I did myself. I'm not a developer, but I looked at the code and it didn't look that hard to do, which is actually removing a feature more than adding. It's these headers. The headers, there used to be possible to drag them and close them to collapse, and it was a good feature, I guess, but it was more troublesome than, like, it wouldn't help. So why? Because it would make it more easy to collapse panels without actually, when you're trying to scale or change the size of your editors. So right now when you move your editors, these arrows only appear on the editors. So that's much better. And how do you collapse them? Well, you can still use the shortcut. The shortcut is still there. It's Alt F9, or you can also right click and toggle header. I added the option here in the header. So that way you can still hide it if you want, but it's not gonna make it confusing, you know, when you go here and you end up collapsing instead of moving your editor. Another thing about the single column layout is that there's still things missing. Of course, it's a work in progress. One of them that is missing is that the single column layout is much better for introducing things such as search. Since everything is on a list, filtering this list, it would be much simpler and much more readable if it's in a list. So imagine if we could have like filtering, like filter all the animated settings, filter all by string, so you can type and you can search for like resolution and the frame or anything really on your list. That is planned. It has been planned for months already, and even Jacques Luc, the developer of the animation nodes, he made a proof of concept, like a little add-on where it makes it work, and that it's planned. But another thing that is planned is that, and I see people complain, is that the single column layout makes the column be more narrow, so you gain more space in the viewport, but also makes you that you have to scroll to see all these options. Well, the good news is that there are plans for making this list vertical, so that way you could have, okay, a bit wider, but then you will have all the settings here, and add-ons could make their own panels, and we can keep adding more properties there without actually having to like be careful, like, oh no, let's not add too many options because, or too many tabs, because we're going to run out of space. If you have vertically, you can even add spacing, because for example, the first few options are more like general, and their other options are per object. They change depending on what you have selected. If you have a lamp, it changes. So that's another thing that that is gonna make this single layout much better. What else? I think I covered everything that I wanted to show. There's new tools for collections. You can now not only press M to, for example, you have here, I can press M to move to a new collection, and you can say lamps. And this moving to collections was there before, but now you can also press Shift M to link to a collection. So what is a link? It's basically it's like a copy, but it's not a real copy. You only have, in this case, one monkey, but I want it to be in multiple collections at a time. So then I will link them to that collection. So Shift M and put it in lamps, and now the object is not only in the scene collection, but also in the lamps collection. So the way I have it in both. It's the same concept. What else? Transparent backgrounds. Now the objects, the menus will have a nice little background color that you can set up on your theme. It's in the theme, user interface, pull down, and in the pull down you just need to change the inner alpha. If you don't like it, you can make it transparent. Just remove the alpha from the inner value of your pull down. And since now we have sub panels, we can also style those sub panels. They are, let's go here, see some sub panels. By default, it has a very small value of, let's go to properties. Sub background is the color for the sub panel. So by default, it has a dark, very low value with alpha. Why with alpha? Because if you have a sub panel inside another sub panel, then they will add up and then they will get darker, right? The more sub panels they're inside of each other, you can go crazy. You can keep adding sub panels and then it will go darker. So it's like you go deeper. And that's the idea behind it, that the darker you go is like because you're going more in. there's I plan to change to this theme. I plan to make the titles a bit brighter, so that way we'll go from brighter to darker. So brighter will be the header, a bit darker the background, and then a darker the sub panel. So that way you have like you can help your memory. It's like, okay, the brighter is higher, the darker is lower. So that will also help. But of course you can, it's Blender, you can go nuts and make whatever. I think I'm gonna start with the questions so far, because it's already 9:30. So in order to keep the questions going, I will go up, all the way up, and just scroll all the way until I was asking you guys about, yes, thumbs up, thank you very much. And let's go here. So I started around here, 9 p.m. Here, would Blender get a new logo or icon? No, the Blender logo, I think it's really good, it's timeless, but I would like to propose to start using this flat logo, Blender logo, instead of, you know, when you search for Blender you get different logos. Oh yeah, Blender 3D, come on Google, I'm logged in. There are some Blender logo, like the application logo on Windows or in some apps. No, I don't even have it here. It's like 3D with the gradient. Horrible. It's this one. Yeah, this one. I think we should start using the flat one. Too unified, right? Any word on Mantaflow? No, I haven't heard from them yet. After the code quest, how many person will continue to develop Blender? The same amount of people. They will just go home and do it from home usually. Of course, some developers like William, UI designer, continues to work, but it's not the same because he was more like a volunteering. So you spend less time. Many people will go back to like volunteering, I guess, but most of the people that are here, they are already developers, like they're paid full-time or at least part-time. So that would be that. So most of the people will continue to work. So just not here though. Pity. Is there an estimated time for modifiers like soft surf to work in edit mode? No, I haven't checked. Faster. Layers were fast and useful because you could say which were visible at the touch of a hotkey. Will collections be able to function similarly? Which collection at the touch of a hotkey? Well, you could set up hotkeys, but no. There are plans in how to assign those, like maybe with a UI list in the 3D view where you could set which the visibility of the collections faster, and then maybe assign shortcuts. The problem with assigning shortcuts is that you have to give up some other shortcuts, right? So yeah, it's tricky though. I mean, layers were fast, but they didn't have naming, you couldn't sort them, they were not possible to be, they couldn't be nested. Collections can be nested, named, everything. So yeah, it's you gain and you lose, right? What is the interactive mode about? Well, I talked about it in the previous video. Just check it out. I talked about it at the beginning of the previous live stream. Camera focus on your microphone. You are kind of blurred. Yes, because you know what I do to focus here? This is a one-man show basically. So what I do is just put Psyduck here, and then I focus on Psyduck, and I just hope for the best. The problem is that as I'm doing the live stream, I move the microphone forward or backwards. So then I screw up the focus. I need to make like put on a thing here where I can focus always. I'm learning. Let's continue. We will be able to set up the mode select pie menu on tab key. Of course, you can change any tab, any hotkey. Almost any. Some of them are hard-coded, like the axis when you're moving or scaling, when you're transforming. Really want to know about text editing tools update. Oh, thank you for subscribing. Really want to know about text editing tools update. What? Text editing tools. Oh, for the actual text object. Yeah, I wish there were more. There were more updates in that regard, especially like how troublesome is to set the bold and the italics and all of that. It needs work. How to use 2.8 Grease Pencil? Well, wait a bit, because Grease Pencil is coming to 2.8 very soon, like super soon. Blender has animation layers. No, it doesn't have animation layers, but it's planned, and it's also something that is going to be needed for the new engine, for the real-time mode. Please return search to spacebar back. You can also change it, and I already mentioned why it's there. Is because you can use the tools in combination, and it actually is faster. Especially when add-ons starts adding their own tools. When I use Wireframe, I can select all the vertices with box select before. How do I do that? When I use Wireframe, I can't. What? So I have wireframes and oh yeah, presets. Before I wanted to talk about presets. We're thinking about having presets for these settings, for the shading and the overlays, so that way you could have a preset that will be like wireframe, only wireframes, and then it will like turn on this on, and then it will turn the X-ray with the 0 value, so that way you can switch. Maybe you can even assign a shortcut. That would be pretty nice, so that way you can switch on and off. But in this case, if I press tab to go to edit mode. Let's see, select. It didn't select the ones in the back. Here, yes, it is selected. No, I think so. Or maybe I didn't understand exactly. Let's see. I have a 3D hologram table display like from Iron Man. Would you guys add Blender support to it? A 3D hologram table display. I don't know. Send one to the institute and hope for the best. Yeah, it's really hard to develop if you don't have the hardware, right? Or ask the manufacturers. Do you play Fortnite, Pablo? No, it's not for Linux, right? I don't think so. Like Fortnite Linux? I don't think so. Bitwine? Oh, somebody is from last year. Somebody reported that it's working. Anyway, I'm on Linux, so I'm very limited with the selection of games. There are many, but still limited. Lots of Viewport UI workflow improvements, and they're all great. Are there going to be any cycles improvements? Yes, of course there are cycles improvements. There is a summary of code about the many lights sampling, where you can actually set up many lights. Then cycles also got optimizations. There is a new hair VSDF being planned. So yes, of course cycle is going to have improvements. And the IES support, which was added last week. Will there be changes in the physics simulation? Yes, when the new engine, the real-time engine. Will there be possibility to toggle on or off on control over a 3D cursor? And will you be able to add, wait. To toggle on and off the 3D cursor? Yes, you can, it's an overlay. You just enable 3D cursor or not. Then will you add 3D gizmos to move it and rotate it? Not to the 3D cursor yet, but maybe in the future. I heard there were, like, people wanted to have that. Geometry level of detail in EEVEE. No, not yet, but that could be part of the new real-time engine, right? With logic. What do you personally think about the tab edit mode change? I have mixed feelings. I keep pressing tab all the time. I wanted to keep tab as or like switch it with the tools, just so search can be back in the search. But now I understand why. It's because of the holding the spacebar and then moving to like R or G or S. So you can hold, and then I already explained this before, but basically that's the reason. And then I understood why it is now. Still, it's taking me a while to learn about the number 1, 2, 3, but I think it's just a matter of getting used to it. I mean, I've been using Blender for 16 years with edit mode in the tab. Of course, it's not gonna be an easy walk, but I think I'm gonna, if we try to implement the pie menus in maybe number 1, it will be a win-win. It's still on the right side of the keyboard, still is a key that everybody has, and everybody has it on the right side. So maybe once we have that, it's not a big loss. Just to implement the pie menu slowly. What about the texture paint mode? Will it improve? Yes, it would improve. But have you seen Armory Paint 3D? It's awesome. Armor Paint. It's yeah, it's painting with the Armory. It's pretty nice. Sorry. Oh Jesus, the music. Pretty promising. On which version of Blender Urim will add to Blender 2.8 or 2.81? Depends when it's ready. Actually, if it gets ready before like August, you might get just in Blender 2.80. Can we get a Q&A with Lucas when he's there? That would be that would be actually pretty great. Lucas Stockner, you're talking, right? There's also Lucas Tone. Any word on incorporating implicit skinning? Yeah, it's something Tom really wants, but no developer has. You know, it's open source. You can't just force them to add it. There are other priorities. There's bug fixes. There are other things. It's the open source dynamics. If somebody wants to change it or add it, implement it, it will come. I have a GTX 1050. Is it smooth for 2.8? Yes, it is. I'm using my laptop here is a 1050, not even 1050 Ti, so, and it works just fine. Do you know when Alembic will be working in 2.8? It should be working already, isn't it? It should be working because the plan is that Spring Team will use it. So if it's not working, it will be working very soon because the Spring Team needs it, and it's super important to work with other softwares. Has the bug that makes Blender crash after adding a new node been fixed? What? There is a crash when adding a new node to what? Like a shader node. Like I select this, add a new material, and then add a new shader. No, where is it? Is a converter shader to RGB. Yeah, it doesn't crash. There are crashes being fixed every day, so you have to keep an eye on it. Let's see what else. A little request from the new mode changing. Can the one key be toggle between object and edit mode? Yes and no. The problem is that if you're in weight paint mode and then you press 1, what would it go? Will it go to object mode or will it go to edit mode? If it goes first to object mode and you want it to go to edit mode, then it means that you have to do click twice. So yeah, there's a reason why changing between modes now, it's better that each key has a specific type. But this being said, not a lot of people know this, but in the input, when you're changing your keys, for example, let's go to object, like to change to object mode. It's in the 3D view. Set object mode. That's another thing, that the image editor still is using tab for that. That's a bug, needs to be fixed. Anyway, any of these modes, for example, edit mode, can't find the key. But anyway, we key binding, number 1. Set object or sub mode. There you go. You can have a setting that is called toggle. So this case, number 1 will go to object mode, and if I enable toggle, now if I'm in edit mode and I press 1, it's a toggle. I keep pressing 1 and it will toggle. So that way you can make any setting a toggle. You can here you can make anything basically a toggle. So if you go number 2 for, or number 3 for weight paint, you can make it, this one is for weight paint, so you can make it a toggle, and now you press 3 and it will go back and forth. So in the case of the sub modes, you will lose that, but it's a toggle. I like it. And the toggles are also nice for when you're setting, for example, sculpt brushes. So if you're like if you have like sculpt brushes, you have assigns, and then you can just change the tool and make it a toggle, and you will be able to toggle between brushes. And that's something I think the smooth brush has. If you're in sculpt, you press S and it will change between the tools. This is another thing that Campbell fixed, now that when you're changing the tools, it will update here in the list. That's very nice. Oh, another thing that it's a work in progress, so don't critique that much yet. It's a new editor that is being tested, is the tool properties, which basically brings back the 2.7 listing. So besides having the tools, some of the tools up here, you can also have all the tools on the side. So if you want it here as a popover, you can have it, or you can also have it right here. And the idea is that some of the popovers are gonna go away, so then they're gonna be here, the ones that are like really not that used. And also having like 100 popovers up here is not ideal. So the idea of the tool properties editor is that it's context sensitive. So whatever your tool you're using or the mode that you're in is gonna change the settings that you have. And I think it's a neat concept, because you can have it like on the side, and if you're like sculpting, you have it, you change it here, you can change the brush in the old system, or you can also change it here, you can change the settings. I still think having it in the top bar is better, because it means you can really go full screen and then change it from here, but yeah, you have to test it. Did you know also that Control Shift Space now goes really full screen? Shift Space goes full screen with the top bar and bottom bar, and Control Shift Space goes really full screen. When will EEVEE support point density? Eventually, I guess, because it's supposed to replace everything in Blender internal, so it should. Is there any work being done on the standard set of Blender icons? Yes, there is. By in Blender chat, we are chatting with in the UI channel. There is a UI channel. We are chatting together with Hendrich, which is the the designer that designed the icons for the Blender 2.5, and his awesome work, he's now applying it again, and he made a thread here on Blender Artists where he's sharing all his progress of new icons, and it's just awesome. Like the way he works is great. He's now trying to make like a more like a pictogram, monochromatic, flat, one color only, and in the future Blender will be able to theme those colors. So that means that you can have the colors and the icons in any color you want. And it looks a bit better, I think, because you're not lost in this sea of shapes that you have here that sometimes you don't even make that sense, like the iron for the smooth. An iron. Who makes an iron? Then yeah, it just I really like the work that he's doing. And he knows what he's doing. He did the previous icons. Blender is awesome for a lot of things, but one thing that really sucks is physics. Yeah, well, physics are hard, man. They're tough. Please tell me object mode switching pie menus are returning. Well, that's what I was mentioning before. That would be pretty great. Thank you for subscribing. When do you plan on releasing 2.8? This year? Yeah, the idea is this year. Beta in August and released before Christmas, I guess. Hopefully before. Blender conference will be a good target, but it's, you know, it's always hard around the Blender conference. But it will be a great PR to do it at the conference. Let's see. Already saw Lucas proof of concept AO node in the Blender Artist forum? No, I try not to go to Blender Artist that much. There's always discussions, especially when the 2.8. This one is very nice. I like this one, but the 2.8 is, it's like it's not a good place to go. I somebody tweeted once a picture from a thread, made me not want to go there. I find I can't get used to space not being search. Yes, I also find it. I can't get used to it. Is a twist can be changed in any time. What about C for select? Select. Make the tab pie menu return. Tab pie menu return. It never went. Well, it was never there. It was an add-on. It was never official. F1, 2, 3, 4 for shading modes. No, no. F1 is for open. F2 for saving. F3 for saving the render. I wouldn't be able to get used to it. Sculpt shortcuts. We'll click and wait to select brush remain. Click and wait. You have the other shortcuts. You have for Shift C for crease, for example, but you can also set your own. Think. Very weird, the 1-2 key for edit, because you need to change key to enter. One key feels faster. Also, tab feels easier to access. Yeah, but that's a problem, that you only come in and out of edit mode. That's okay when Blender only had 2 modes, but that has too many. And then you will have to use pie menus for that. But the pie menus change, the objects change depending on the, object modes change depending on your object type. So if you have an armature, you only have 3 modes. If you have a mesh, you have like 5, 6. If you have a curve, you have different modes. So it means that when you press tab, if you have a pie menu, it's always different number of options. Weird. What about alt select? What do you mean alt select? Alt select should be there when you have 2 objects, and then alt select. Yeah, this still is there. Will EEVEE support OSL? Not that I know. Anything you can tell us about the future of physics and particles? Watch the previous video about the game engine. Is there currently a way to do hard shadows on EEVEE whilst using an HDR? Well, I mean, the closest is that you can make on EEVEE, you can make a sun lamp and you can make it very small, but it's still gonna be soft. So you can lower the softness, but it's gonna be soft. You can change the size, but yeah, that's a problem. The hard shadows, like super sharp shadows, are hard to do. Can we please have camera ray visibility and hold out toggles for collections with render layers? Render layers are gone. It's view layers now. And can we have camera ray visibility and hold out toggles for collections? Yeah, well, you have exclude, but yeah, for collections, yeah, that should totally be doable. I hope I can change space. Yes, to be rotating the viewport. Eek, rotating the viewport. Can we create new brushes? Of course, you can always create new brushes. Can we assign search into 2x spacebar? You like that one? It should be possible. Will dynamic spacebar still be around? Dynamic spacebar, what do you mean? Any idea how editing with a laptop will look like? I use emulate mode. Yeah, I mentioned that maybe the viewport, the view changes can be assigned to the first key next to number 1, to the first key, and then the rest could stay the same, because emulate numpad all it does usually is just change the views. Actually, I used emulate numpad. This is 2.7. I haven't changed anything, and I'm pressing the buttons on my keyboard, and I use like in the left side. I always use emulate numpad, even though my keyboard has a thing. It has a numpad, but I'm just used to it because it's faster to move the view. Because you guys thought about moving cycles completely to OpenCL, since CUDA has performance difference between Windows and Linux. No. On Linux it works just fine. I don't know, I have no experience on Windows. Will the sculpt brushes ever be able to save presets like a standard graphic app? Sculpt brushes ever be able to save presets? Well, preset system is coming, but I don't know if it's related to what you want. Why not make 2 modes? One mode is fast, where you use shortcuts to use the tools as we used to, and another 101 mode and use G to switch to the graph tool. I don't know. I think the fast mode, like beginners should be able to use the fast mode even when they're starting. They should discover these things. Should make it easy to discover. We shouldn't give them a limited Blender just because they're just starting with Blender. It should be the full-on thing. Maybe, okay, some things can be changed to make it not so awkward. We could give them hints, like for example the navigation widget. You can make it more friendly, but all the tools should be there. They should access everything, because that's how you discover, right? You're not a beginner of your life. You just discover and start pressing buttons. The triangle symbol for splitting the view are missing. Yes, now it's completely invisible. But what I want to do, I actually spent quite some time trying to make the hotspot for this area. When you put your mouse here, it's too small, and wanted to make it bigger so it's more discoverable, and also people find out that you can right click and split the area or join the areas, and also make improvements so you can actually join areas that are not similar size. Or for example, if you have 2 editors that are matching and they match, then okay, they match, terrible, they are stuck. So it would be nice if you could have like a shortcut, like press Alt or so, and then it could unstuck it. That would be pretty cool. And maybe also shortcuts here to have a split horizontally, split vertically directly here, so people can discover it more easily. There are many things that could be added to make the splitting area better, and you don't have to really have the markers on the sides. I think there was a setting for hiding the markers on the layout widgets on the side. Yeah, show layout widgets. It was a setting. It was working before the change to make it rounded corners. So now I think this setting is not even doing anything, but it was there. Do you have to hold space to use the hotkey swap, or you can just tap, press, and press the hotkey? Both. You can do space G, or hold space and then do B, for example. It's just much faster, right? You just change much faster. New logo, I already answered that. What about having context-dependent menus with spacebar? If hovering on a face, you could extrude, for example. Well, context-dependent, for example, the W key got a rework. Actually, I haven't talked about it before, but now the W key is a bit more organized. It's organized on the context that you have. So, for example, if you are in face select mode, you will see options for the faces. And if you are in vertex select, you see other options for the vertices, and the same for the edges. So it's a bit more context sensitive, and now it's called context menu. It's not called specials anymore. How would you solve shortcut contradiction for X-ray and wireframe? With presets. That's, I think that's what I mentioned before. So the idea is to have presets that you could set up for yourself, and you could choose like which options to have on and off. So I want wireframes and face orientation, and just save it as a preset for whatever key. Are you familiar with bokeh? Yes. I mean, what kind of bokeh? You mean that kind of bokeh? Let's see. Oh, I'm actually running out of time. Jesus, it's 10. And I'm only answering the ones from 10:20. Sorry, guys. Do you think we'll get a loading bar for shaders? Yes, it was there. It's just not working right now, but it was there. When you open a new file, EEVEE should tell you that it's compiling the shaders. And it was there. It was. It's just with the new bar, it disappeared, but it should appear here at the bottom in the status bar. Much faster and better pressing R for rotation instead of pressing space R. Yeah, of course, you press R for rotation because it's active. It's like an immediate tool. But then if you press space bar, this is an example. It's the worst example ever because it's an example with the object mode, which is very limited here. But imagine you have an add-on, you're in active mode, or you're in edit mode. Then you have more options and then you could choose them. This also looks very ugly because the icon is like twice as big as the text. Once the icon is smaller, which I think it should be smaller, and want to start making tests with it. I already tested it because it's only a variable that you can change to make the text, the icon smaller. I think the bigger problem is that there's no padding. Here, for example, between the buttons and the top, there is padding. On the bottom too, and everywhere there is padding on the sides, except on the icon. There's no padding, so it should be like at least 30% smaller. Panels could be implemented option enabled in preferences to auto hide last panel when I open the next one. Well, actually that was proposed, that we were thinking about it, that instead of having click to open a panel, it will do the same as control click. So basically when you click on one, it will close the rest. So that way you can you save scrolling, because every time you click on one, it will yeah, it will hide the rest. But I don't know, would you use that? Let me know in the comments. Would you rather prefer this behavior that when you open a panel it will close the rest, or would you have it the other way around, like always open and open and open? What the spacebar gives me in edit mode? Is it context sensitive? Yes, it is. How do you make reflections not to be noisy in EEVEE? You just give it more samples. Will there be an update optimizing of the modifiers in 2.8? What? Optimizing of the modifiers, adjustable, animatable, fall off like in C, I don't know. Optimizing, that is not related. Optimization is not adding fall off. Is porting the bevel shader that Cycles has already to EEVEE planned at all? That one actually, I don't know. We could ask the developers. What happens to the Gooseberry project? Well, needs budget, but there might be. It's planned. We never discarded to do a second cycle for the Gooseberry project. All right, we are reaching the time. It's over the time already, and I'm gonna answer 5 more questions. Okay, 1. Optimal view from the subdiv modifier doesn't work with the new wireframe. Optimal view, no, it's not implemented yet. It's planned to have panoramic cameras in EEVEE. Yes, there's no time frame for that, but yes. Any plans to make the layout adaptive, where the number of columns adapt automatically to the width of the panel? Yes, it is planned. Actually, Bastian is working on the grid layout. He revised that branch, grid layout, grid flow layout. I was something like that. Basically, when you have room, it could adapt. But what should it adapt? It should maybe have, instead of, the problem is if you make this adaptive, like responsive, so where do you define the break? Where does it go? So maybe it could halfway, it could go every block, it could put it aside on the next, on the side, but then you end up with the same problem that you have in 2.7, which is that you end up with settings next to each other that doesn't mean anything at all. You have settings that are supposed to mean something next to each other, but you don't really know exactly if they belong to each other. Like the shift and the clipping, they're not really related, right? Shift is one position and clipping is the distance. So it's, yeah, there are problems with this layout. So if you introduce this here, then you will end up with that problem. But what if there was room for, you have one panel, you make more room, and then the second panel comes on top? Then that means you have two panels. Problem is that panels don't have the same height, so it's hard to make them match. But at least you won't have the issue that content is not it's not next to each other. Did you see PT Wasso's column layout idea? Sliders take the whole space, not only halfway. Better control. I haven't, but there is a post in where, Blender Artist, like here, this one 6344 post. It's here, I guess. How can you go to this one at the end, right? Yes, this thing. No, yes and no. The problem is that at some point when you start, like if the number gets too big, it will start eating the label. So it's not yeah, no, in this case it makes sense, for example, for the drop down frame rate and the FPS in the same one. But again, you end up with a similar issue that the values will take over. Then when you're editing, when you click on it and drag, what do you drag? Like, or when you edit it, do you, like, the label will go away, and when you edit and you're moving it, also the label will go away, right? Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. Will we have a specific shading for sculpting? Yes, matcaps, custom matcaps. And with that bomb, I will start to go. It was quite fun. It was quite fun. I think we managed to squeeze in a lot of content. I still only managed to answer questions up to 9:25, so it's half an hour of questions and answer. Sorry about that. I will get going. I will try, like, the icon for rotate are the default. I don't understand the questions. How do you animate at 7.5 FPS with a lot of imagination? No, you should start disabling things. You should disable, like, just leave all the one character, hide the rest. If it's hidden, it's not gonna be calculated, so it should be faster. Simplify on, or just make a layout model. If your computer can't handle it, make a layout model. So the it's a mosquito. Wow, I forgot the window open. It's summer. That's how you remember it's summer. It's freaking mosquitoes. Yes, if you make a layout model without the junctions, without the deformation, and you only have like tubes, that will also speed it up a lot. And it's not only 2.8, also 2.7, and anything basically. If you have like a model that has like the arms, you can make it so the so this is one tube and this is another tube. If they're separated, if they're not deforming, it's gonna be faster to compute. And in the end, it's kind of the same feedback that you get, right? You only need to see the shape. So that's it for this week. I will start going because it's already 10:10. It's quite late and we just covered everything. Follow the Blender Developers YouTube channel there. You probably are following because it's like reaching 17,000 already now. And here we are like 3,000, so I would say everybody is following it there. I would see you again next week at the same time, same place, same everything. I will see you. Should I put the music like always? Watch your headphones if you're using headphones. And yes, I was reading some of the comments. I would see you again next week. Watch your headphones, people. Don't get left. Awesome. Bye bye.